We all grow up hearing the stories of things that go bump in the night. The man with a hook for the hand. Bloody Mary. The list goes on. We grow up hearing these stories and putting them into the back of our minds. We use our rational minds to weed out what is true and just average folklore. I used to think the same way until I went there. Before I go further, I'd like to note that we had a very different kind of hobby we enjoyed. We would research places on the internet that were abandoned or hell. If we were lucky, possibly haunted, and we would explore them. We always had a great thrill exploring the unknown, looking into places that society had left behind to rot. Now, returning to the story. I was 18 at the time, and I was with my two best friends, Eric and Paul. It was a Saturday night, and we decided to go on one of our adventures. I told my friends about this place that we hadn't explored yet. A few towns over, there was this abandoned factory. Strangely, even with the amount of research I put into this place, I couldn't find a single thing about the history, besides the address. There was no information on what it used to be, no ghost stories, no records, no nothing. It just seemed strange but cool. It gave me the thought of possibly uncovering some interesting information myself. So we all piled up into my car and followed the GPS to the destination. It said that the building was off the road away. We looked out of the window and saw nothing but trees. I assumed the factory was deep in the woods, but this didn't faze any of us, because we were just so used to exploring the darkest, creepiest parts of the world. As we started to cut through the trees, I shined my flashlight to light the way, and could clearly see the factory up ahead. It was huge and overgrown with trees and foliage. It must have been about 3 stories high, and all of the windows were either busted or boarded. I thought, we hit the jackpot. The 3 of us proceeded into the derelict structure and put on our respirators. Safety first, right? There was junk everywhere. Cans, old motors, trinkets of a different era, way before mine. And as we found more items, we came to the conclusion that this used to be some sort of automotive factory. As we continued deeper into the building, something felt wrong, like a nauseating feeling. It was just wrong. It was like a wave of something going across my body. I stopped for a moment, and Eric asked, "What's wrong?" Not wanting to sound like a pussy, I just waved to him, and we kept walking. Towards the centre of the building, there was a set of stairs. This place was creepy enough without an old rickety staircase that only goes down. I'd never felt this feeling before, but I actually didn't want to go down there. I shined my flashlight down the steps and stared for a moment. All that was down there was silence. "Come on, you guys are acting like a bunch of fucking pussies," I remember Paul saying. He clearly led the way. Me and Eric followed sheepishly behind. We finally hit the bottom of the stairs, and to my unnerving surprise, there was an arm of a mannequin laying on the ground. I thought to myself, what would something like this be doing here? as we found out what the factory was for earlier. It just seemed so out of place. The feeling I mentioned earlier suddenly got worse. We cautiously scanned the room with our lights, the beams illuminating the dust around, or whatever actually was in the air. With the room illuminated by our flashlights, it was obvious that there really wasn't anything amazing down here, just more motors and junk. We were about to turn around and head back, until I noticed something behind what appeared to be a large boiler. So I walked up to it, and it was a door. It was very short, about half my height. It was also covered in rust, so I slowly tried to open it, and stepped inside. Without thinking, I walked forward, intrigued, yet horrified. I turned around and shined my light back into the room that we came from. My friends, they weren't there. Then the door shut behind me. There was no handle. I was trapped. There was nowhere out. I was insanely terrified. I couldn't even think straight. I banged on the door. I screamed for my friends. But nothing happened. I turned around and shined my light. And what I found was an old rusted ladder leading down into a dark hole. Clearly there was nothing I could do but go down there and hope there was a way out. Oh God, there was a horrible smell coming from the hole. I proceeded down the ladder, and I noticed about every 10 feet the brick shaft I was descending down would look more decrepit and dirty than it initially was. It seemed sort of unnatural. But then I finally hit the bottom of the ladder. The smell definitely got progressively worse. The floor was flooded up to my ankles with murky water. I shined the light forward and my beam didn't hit the end of the room. It must have been huge. I mean, I had to be dreaming, because how could this be an automotive factory? The deeper I moved into the room, the more mannequin parts I saw. There were heads, arms, legs, everything. And some had red liquid dripping from their eyes and mouth. Who knows what it was? Even deeper, there were mannequins that were standing. Some were missing arms and heads, and they got more frequent as I kept walking. As I walked even deeper, there were more intact mannequins, but still with the red liquid dripping from their faces. I began to get a little panicky. The more mannequins I passed, the closer they got. They kept closing in on me. Eventually I hit a wall. There was a rusted door, and without thinking I burst through the door and ended up outside the factory. I was standing behind the building before I could turn around to see what happened to the door. It was already shut. I didn't even attempt to second guess what I saw by opening the door. I just wanted to go home. I walked back to my car and drove off. I was so drained, I wasn't even concerned about my friends. They probably called for a ride. I began to drive and noticed that I hadn't seen many cars. I mean, I knew it was late, but actually, I didn't even see one car on the entire ride back. I finally arrived home. There were no cars in the driveway. This was very odd, because both of my parents never stay out late. It was still pouring rain, and I ran into the porch to avoid getting soaked. As I went to turn the knob, I noticed that it was unlocked. I got that nauseating feeling again that I had in the factory. I needed sleep. I cautiously entered the house, dropping my gear, and I climbed up the stairs. I went to flip on the lights, but nothing happened. The storm probably blew out the power. I walked to my parents' room. The door was slightly ajar, so I opened it more, with a loud creaking noise. I shined my flashlight into the room and saw 2 mannequins standing behind my parents' bed. These ones were different though. They both had large, sinister-looking smiles running across their faces. Mannequins don't look like that. So I panicked. I ran for my room and I slammed the door. My heart was pounding. I began to sweat. I heard my closet door open. I turned around and felt my heart sink into my stomach. I saw a mannequin standing in my closet. It had Eric's skin stretched over his white body. His face was crudely pinned to the mannequin's face. There were just dark holes where his eyes and mouth would have been. Blood dripped from the messy skin-covered mannequin. The head turned towards me, and in Eric's voice said,
"Curiosity killed the cat."
His mouth moved as he uttered those words. The limbs also began to rotate, ripping the flesh as it did. I then heard a loud ringing noise in my ear. My head was pounding. I felt the nauseous feeling again, then threw up. I blacked out. I woke up to the sight of my 2 friends' faces. We were in the basement of the factory. Whoa, easy man. You blacked out. Looked like you hit your head pretty hard, Eric said. I eventually sat up and began to tell them about the room behind the boiler, the large rooms, the mannequins, and my confrontation with the mannequin in Eric's skin. They were very confused by this, so I got up and walked behind the large boiler to show them the door. There was no door. It was all just a dream. Or was it?